Hello, this is John Majori with MajoriOnBowie.com. And this is the MajoriOnBowie.com YouTube channel where I have a weekly interview that has something to do with David Bowie. So if you're here, why don't you hit like and subscribe? And for updated daily content, go to the blog, MajoriOnBowie.com. And today I am really honored and excited to have a return guest, Julian Shah-Tayler, AKA The Singularity. Julian is an accomplished singer, songwriter, producer, and remixer, working with legendary names in music, some of whom are connected with Bowie, such as Mike Garson and Carmen Rojas. They're working with him on his upcoming album, Hane Tatame, which I'm going to ask him about. His recent projects include Hunger City, a complete reimagining of the Diamond Dogs album, which we talked about the last time Julian was on this show, which I was really thrilled to have that conversation. So thank you for coming back. We also discussed his 2022 album, Elysium, which was Grammy balloted, and was it number 4 or number 1 on the
number 4 new wave album of 2022.
2022, and it has a single, Melt, which was voted number 18 by the Subculture Shock. It's a terrific album, and while totally new, it contains echoes of 80s Bowie, 80s Iggy Pop, Duran Duran, and it's great for 2024, but it also would have felt at home at the Blitz Club in London in 1981. On top of all that, yeah. On top of all that, he also fronts a Bowie cover band, the band that fell to earth, the David Bowie Odyssey. So, much as the last time, there's so much we could talk about. But I wanted to focus today on the Aladdin Sane cover album, tribute album, project. Forget that I'm 50. I am 55, so I have already forgotten what it's like being 50. It's sad. But before we get to any of that, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me back. I'm excited. It was a lovely conversation last time.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed it too. So before we get specifically into the album, let me ask a very open-ended question. And I'm asking this as somebody who writes about David Bowie on a daily basis. Why Bowie? Why David Bowie?
Oh, he's the greatest writer and chameleon Corinthian caricature that we've ever had. I mean, there are 3 for me. It's Bowie, Prince, and Kate Bush. Like, those 3 have just they explore what it is to be an artist.
Yeah,
it's the art. Like, the first time I heard the song "Loving the Alien," it smacked me across the face. I was just like, what is going on? This is so weird and cool and different and deep.
Yeah,
it's music that really sort of tickles your intellectual and musical funny bone. I love him. He's amazing. And watching interviews subsequently of him and his sense of humor and his humility. Humility is probably the wrong word. He knew he was David Bowie.
Yeah,
but he also knew he was just a human experiencing the human experience. And I just love that about him. The Buddhist thought, the little kernels of wisdom that come through his work and his persona. So yes, there's never been anybody like Bowie.
Yeah. I don't disagree with any of that, obviously. Do you think there's more interest now in Bowie than there was maybe during the last 30 years of his life?
Yeah, I do actually. I think when he left after Never Let Me Down, I feel like his star was most definitely tarnished somewhat, and people sort of started moving away from him a little bit. And I don't think he got back into his stride until One Outside. I think that was his definitive comeback. And that, although I love some of the music in between those sections, I have to tell you a story. So I won a competition when I was in London. It was around 98, 99, to play a stadium with my rock band. We beat out all these other bands. and we came off stage off this stadium stage, and the guy who arranged the stadium show said, "Oh my God, he was so good. You would have been I'm sure you would have been very pleased if the original person we had booked to do this festival had been the headliner." And I was like, because the headliner was Paul Weller. And I like Paul Weller, he's good. It's not my thing necessarily, and I'd met him and he was lovely. And they said, yeah, the original guy we had who was headlining was David Bowie, but he couldn't sell tickets.
When was this?
98, 99.
That's amazing.
Which blew my mind.
Yeah.
Because of course, I was incredibly crestfallen that we weren't playing as support to David Bowie. So it was such a bummer. And then I was like, so Paul Weller, who is respectable, I think he's great legacy. Paul Weller, David Bowie, there's no comparison for me,
See, so this is not a planned question, but what blows my mind about that story, you said 98 or 99?
Mm-hmm.
So this is after he did One Outside. It's after he did Earthling.
It was around Hours, I think.
99 was Hours.
Yeah, I think it was around Hours, and they couldn't sell tickets, or sorry, I might be misquoting him. He might have said they didn't expect to sell tickets.
Yeah.
And they had originally planned for him to be because didn't he do a Morrissey tour where Morrissey ended up having sort of keeping the audience and Bowie losing? For whatever reason, they decided they were going to put Paul Weller up there rather than Bowie. So I was really disappointed. Obviously, I was crestfallen.
So I'm staying away from, forget that I'm 50, but I just the scenario that you're painting is it's sort of wild. Do you think if instead of Tonight and Never Let Me Down, and you mentioned Loving the Alien, which is on Tonight, but if instead of Tonight, after Let's Dance, he skipped directly to Black Tie White Noise, that sequence of albums, Black Tie White Noise, One Outside, Buddha Suburbia.
I read that on your blog. You wrote that on your blog, didn't you?
I think I did. Yeah.
Black Tie White Noise, in retrospect, I love Jump They Say.
Yeah.
One of his best. And it was so timely production wise. But the album isn't a hit and run. It's fine. I think Earthling and One Outside were career highlights.
Yeah.
I think you would have gone. What was the order? I don't remember. Was it Earthling then One Outside, or One Outside then?
No, it was One Outside then Earthling.
See, I think if he'd gone Let's Dance, One Outside,
yeah,
I think he'd have been praised as a bold innovator for the rest of his career.
Yeah,
and I think that was. You're absolutely right. Tonight was and I like Tonight too. I read your article about that. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I don't listen to it, honestly. I Loving the Alien is magnificent, and we always get requested Blue G. So clearly 2 singles make a good album in some people's heads, right?
Yeah.
So it's fine. And as I said on the last time we talked, Never Let Me Down, I really liked.
Yeah.
But Let's Dance to One Outside would have been one of those station to station to low places where station to station is just brilliant and fun and funky, and then low is like, what the hell is this? That would have been Let's Dance to One Outside. And so interesting thought experiment. I think you're right.
Yeah, One Outside I listen to all the time.
And Mike Garson on that record.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you about Mike Garson. That's a good touch point to come back to Aladdin Sane, which is not controversial because everybody likes Aladdin Sane. The album is so much about both the past and the future. There's even a song called Time, right? So it sort of almost centers the album. How do you bring something that is 50 years old to life today?
Do you mean in the context of Forget That I'm 50, the
Yes.
version I did? I mean, you know what? That was an interesting experiment for me, because I mean, I know so many people who are musicians and who are doing music out in the world, and Aladdin Sane to me was always about Mike Garson. Like there are a couple of songs on there I'm not into. I'd be honest with you. I think the Watch That Man is a Ziggy offcut, in my opinion. The Time, Lady Grinning Soul, Aladdin Sane, those three songs, for me, that is the album. That's the heart of the album. And it's the part where Bowie executes what he does best by bringing the best of the best and making them do what they do the best way, in the way that he brought Fripp in on Fashion, for example. Like that is what he really did well. It's like, obviously he wrote songs that were genius. I was very much into the idea of taking the piano away from those songs and approaching them with no piano, to just sort of highlight the excellence of the songs, because they're strange songs. Like the only song that I vocalize, lead vocal and backing vocal on lots of them, the only song I vocalize is Lady Grinning Soul, which I adore that song, and it is mainly because of the piano. And then when I broke it down, because I got asked to perform that song a lot during the pandemic. I used to do live streams during the pandemic, and it was one of the top songs I was requested. And I learned how wonderful the song is. It's basically like a strange Spanish song, So,
it's very different than anything else Bowie did.
Oh, sure. He never performed it live, I believe.
Yeah.
As far as I know. In fact, I have a video from Claudia Lanier, appreciating my version. She said, "This is Claudia. I love your version of Lady Grinning Soul." Because she's the
Why don't you explain who she is? Yeah.
Oh, so Claudia Lanier is Brown Sugar.
Yeah.
She's Brown Sugar and she's Lady Grinning Soul.
Yeah.
I mean, like, this is two of the most pivotal, greatest songs ever written in the history of rock and roll, about this one woman. And she's lovely, and she was lovely enough to write me this little thing. I'll send it to you, a little clip that I have that she did for me.
Yeah, please do.
It's such a thrill. It's like I do this song about her, by Bowie, and she's very respectful and liked it. So that's really interesting. So I wanted to bring in all of my friends. Like, I was working with a guy called Michael Aston from Gene Loves Jezebel at the time, and I was just like, okay, well, why don't I get Gene Loves Jezebel with Michael Aston to do a song? And then I thought, why don't I just ask all my friends to put vocals and do versions and all that sort of stuff? And everybody was really keen. So I got Darwin, who's David J's manager, to come in and do it, and he worked. And then I got Gene, who works with he was the guitar player from my Bowie band at the time, and he got the drummer from OK Go to play drums. And it's just, they're not stars necessarily, but there's lots of wonderful musicians I know. I just wanted them to come and work with me and to see what that was like, because I spend my day, I mean, I could show you my studio. I spend my day on my own, doing everything on my own. I'm the executive decision maker of everything I do. I never work with people unless they're guests that come into my home, basically. So it was nice to reach out to other artists and ask them to collaborate with me on that stuff. So that was one of the reasons I did that.
So I was going to ask, when you're producing an album that involves other artists, and you started to describe it, how different is that than when you set out to do your own? Like when you did Hunger City, you're working with yourself, so your vision of each of the songs is your own, but that's not necessarily the case with Forget That I'm 50.
Well, it's like herding cats. I mean, that was why Diamond Dogs ended up just being me on my own. I mean, not in any negative way. It's just trying to corral all the versions and all, because I wanted it released on the day that Aladdin Sane was released, because 50th anniversary, same day, it was good. And just trying to get everybody to submit their parts in time was actually quite hard. So I produced physically, like literally in my studio, most of the album. The first song, Watch That Man, which I think Gene did a wonderful job on, he did that, entirely him. I actually asked everybody to do their own version and I'd compile it, but I ended up producing most of it because people have limited time, and so do I, but I'd committed to the project. So, you know, and it was really nice to work with those people. I got Michael Aston, as I say, in here, and then I did an interview with him straight after about Bowie being his influence and all that stuff, which I thought was interesting. And, you know, it's connecting with people. Music's connecting with people, connecting with similar, like if I meet a Bowie fan, like you and I, we never met before the last interview, and I knew you'd be a thoughtful person. I knew you'd have great taste. I knew you'd be articulate because you're a Bowie fan. But really, it's tribal,
Right.
in a way, you know. So that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted all my Bowie fan friends who were brilliant musicians. Some of them made it, some of them didn't, to contribute, and they were all brilliant, and it was wonderful. But it was like herding cats.
Yeah. Was everybody, you said something a few minutes ago about how you de-emphasized the piano on several of the songs. So how difficult was it to convince everybody who did one of those songs to agree to that?
No, the ones I worked on.
Oh, the ones you worked on. Okay.
No,
so,
I mean,
the where that is most noticeable to me was on Aladdin Sane South.
right.
And you actually know Mike Garson. You've worked with Mike Garson. I've heard him say that he's asked about the piano piece on that song every day of his life.
Right.
And you take it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you speak a little bit more about the strategy there?
So, I mean, it's very self-serving. I'm very self-serving in these projects because I don't want to look at an album by David Bowie as being led and controlled in my interest by another aspect of it. So, I mean, that sounds I've inarticulately expressed myself. I apologize. I love Mike Garson's piano. There is no way that anybody, and then obviously I have a couple of songs we've worked on together, when they come through and I put them on my, you know, studio and I listen to what he does, nobody in the world comes close. Yeah. Nobody. He's the greatest rock piano player that ever existed. Yeah. Rick Wakeman's great. Life on Mars is fabulous, but it's not catastrophic and bizarre and that's me. Like what's that song? Through These Architects' Eyes.
Yes.
Like what? How does not compute. So to do a cover of the song, what are you going to do? You're going to ineffectively try to imitate what he's doing? No, just take it out. Yeah. Go back to the roots of the song and find out what's good about the song without the piano. Yeah. Because you don't notice how good the songs are because the piano is so incredible. It's almost like he's trampling a butterfly with his piano playing in a really good way.
Right. Yeah.
but do you understand what I mean? It's like without the long extended piano solo, which is the greatest piano solo of all time, what does the song actually sound like? Yeah. So that's what I wanted to find out. And you know, that song is predominantly Fernando Perdomo, who's a friend of mine who's worked with, you know, loads of prog bands. He's a brilliant musician. So he played guitar on that. I played some guitar, but he did the solos and all that stuff. And Beck Black, who is an artist I've known forever, sang the lyric on it. I did a version with my vocal too, but I wanted it to be a different vocalist for every song. So that's Beck. And it sounds wonderful. Like it's a great song. You don't need the piano on there. So that was the experiment of it, basically.
Yeah, it does sound wonderful. Similar challenge, I'd imagine, I'm going to ask you, with Let's Spend the Night Together, where Bowie himself was covering a Rolling Stones song. So this is a cover of a cover.
Right. And, a cover.
Yeah.
Sounds like a Nine Inch Nails song, right?
And I also don't know if you ever encountered this story. I read Angie Bowie, her take on Let's Spend the Night Together was David Bowie saying to Mick Jagger, look, I'm the new king of the hill now, right? He was sort of not just paying tribute, but actually setting Mick Jagger in his place as being old hat in 1973. So
I mean, there's a good argument that I could make that's fairly true, honestly. But I Stones to me, Brian Jones.
Yeah.
Brian Jones in the Stones, phenomenal. And actually Mick Taylor too. Let's give Mick Taylor his due. Past that point, bits are fine, but there's never an album that's like, you know, Between the Buttons or Exile on Main Street. You know, like that Exile on Main Street is the end of my interest in the Stones.
So now you are producing a song that they had originally made famous, and then Bowie did on Aladdin Sane. And what do you do with it? Like, what's your approach to make it distinct?
I didn't do that one. I didn't do that one. That was one of the ones that I had nothing to do with.
Nothing
So I trusted my friend Johnny, who is a phenomenal producer, artist, absolutely magnificent, like really, truly a genius. And so he just did that one. I had nothing to do with it. I just asked him to do it. That's my executive producer role in that song. So
it did stand out to me, and I'll tell you, you didn't have anything to do with this. I'll just tell you my own reaction. For me, on the Bowie album, it's actually my least favorite song on that album. And I didn't have that reaction on this. It seemed like it was integrated better into Forget That I'm 50 than Bowie's version was integrated into Aladdin Sane, if that makes any sense. That was my reaction to it.
Well, thank you. I'll tell Johnny, because you know, he's brilliant. It's funny because that's the same. I have the same reaction on Aladdin Sane and on Ziggy. Like that cover on Ziggy, can't remember the name off the top of my head. It Ain't Easy.
It ain't easy.
So out of place.
Yes.
Like songwriting wise, sonically, everything. Why? It's the one thorn in the perfect album, in my opinion. I mean, it's a light, easy song. It's just it's nowhere close to Bowie's genius, you know. And so maybe it was a popular live track at the time. I don't know.
Yeah. I again, not to go too far afield, but I once wrote something in one of my posts that Aladdin Sane was out of place on Aladdin Sane, and I got all kinds of negative feedback. What are you talking about?
It is. I agree with you. It is out of place, but it's one of the defining moments.
Yeah. I wasn't saying it was bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think Lady Grinning Soul also. I mean, those two are Mike Garson's songs. He owns those songs. Time is more integrated, right? But those two, they are stratospheric space jazz, and it's not like the rest of Bowie's stuff at that time. So when Diamond Dogs came around, it was like Garson's piano fits more with Bowie and Diamond Dogs because he's reined in a little bit. Yeah. Whereas in Aladdin Sane, he's allowed to bring this singular genius to bear. And so I agree with you. I think both of those, Lady Grinning Soul and Aladdin Sane, are out of place on that album as a glam record by David Bowie. But they elevate it so much that they need to be on the album.
Yeah. It's almost easy to forget who's playing what on Diamond Dogs. And like, you know, Aladdin Sane, Mike Garson stands out so prominently. And Ziggy, Mick Ronson stands out so prominently that you sort of forget, maybe you don't forget, but it would be easy to forget that Mike Garson's on Diamond Dogs and David Bowie is doing most of the guitar work on Diamond Dogs, and Mick Ronson isn't there. So
well, you know, it's funny. I love Mick Ronson's work. He's brilliant. He's a genius, but I don't miss him on Diamond Dogs. I think that his guitar would have been too precise and sexy, and in Diamond Dogs it feels dirty and weird, and I really like that. It's like, it's, you know, Bowie's guitar playing is underrated, I think, and you know, he very much could have done albums with just him as the guitar player and made a career of that. Thank God he didn't, because then we wouldn't have had Robert Fripp.
Right.
And we wouldn't have had Earl Slick and Carlos Alomar balancing each other out, you know. And that, to me, Bowie's great genius, beyond his songwriting and his, you know, presentation, which were, you know, singular and brilliant, was bringing to bear disparate elements and putting them into the pot and making that work. Like Stevie Ray Vaughan on Let's
Right.
Dance. It's a crazy choice, but it's one of the best choices ever made.
He really had a talent for identifying other musicians
Yeah.
and working them in. Yeah. So before we get too far afield from Aladdin Sane, I wanted to ask about, I started by mentioning that it exists between past and future. There are all sorts of references that I think people in the early 70s would have picked up on that are sort of tougher to pick up on now. Twiggy, the Twig the Wonder Kid,
Right.
Billy Dolls, right? It's like maybe at the time you would have known what that
Jean Genet.
Jean Genet, right? Exactly. And there's other stuff in there too. So do those types of references sort of become more surreal or more sort of Dada-esque when you're doing the same songs today, or is it sort of homework for the listener to try to figure out what they meant?
One of the things that really intrigues me about artists like Bowie and the Cure, I learned French because Killing an Arab by the Cure.
Yeah,
I decided, okay, I'm going to learn French so I can read Camus in the original French. Now with Bowie, it's like he drops in these little cultural references.
yeah,
Now, what's interesting, like he drops in literary references, he drops in references to art.
yeah,
Now, if you choose to delve into what he's talking about, because of course now with the internet you can find this stuff out and it's easy,
yeah,
then you have a much richer experience of the art of the music. And I love doing that myself. It's like, in the Villa of Orman, he's making what is that word called where it's an association, all men, but it's
yes,
done, it's like a sound alike, but it's not quite what it is. So you can't claim it's that.
yeah,
But it's interesting because he's always playing with these ideas and he's always giving you cultural reference points. So go and look up who Twiggy is. Go
yeah,
and look up, Jean Genet and read that, and then go and look up that song was about Iggy Pop, and it's a corona of influence. He's always very respectful to the people he's interested in by mentioning them and giving them some time, because pop culture can be awfully throwaway. It can be awfully navel gazing too. It's like if you don't read or you don't reference things, all you're talking about is yourself, in which case you're an egomaniac. And
yeah.
Bowie was an egomaniac, but he was a respectful egomaniac.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a question I was going to ask that I'm not going to, and why. Bowie himself took music from what at the time was the distant past and sort of breathed new life into it. I Wish I Could Shimmy Like My Sister Kate was from 1919. The Alabama song was from the 1920s. He did Belle, which was about 50 years old by the time he did it. And so now you're taking some music that he did 50 years ago and bringing bringing new life to it now. So I was
Wow, that's a weird thought. I never thought of it that way. It's 50-50, isn't it? It's
right.
crazy.
Yeah. So I started coming up with the question around that, but I don't have one.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. If something has great weight and import, then it will be relevant forever,
Yeah.
right? Or it'll be relevant in 50 years. Let's not say forever because it's impossible to say that. It's like Beatles, when they were first, trying to get signed, they were rejected with the guitar music's not going to be around for long.
Yeah.
And honestly, guitar music is really around now. If Imagine Dragons were the biggest rock band of the aughts. Imagine Dragons, rock band. Really?
Yeah. I actually didn't realize they were considered rock band.
Yeah, well, they were the biggest rock band of the
Yeah.
aughts. They sold more records than they, and I think that you have to. I mean, I still listen to Debussy. I still listen to
Yeah.
I listen to ancient Phoenician music because I mean I'm a musician, so obviously it's my entire life and it's very important. But I think it's very important to reference these things. Like if people do not know how great Ziggy Stardust is as a record, then they're missing out on what it really means to write a great piece of music, cohesive piece of music, because
Yeah.
now it's Spotify playlists, right? So
Yeah.
I would rather put out And I mean, you know, obviously I try and do my best to make my own music art worthy of being listened to in a year, let alone 50. But when you know, if I say to somebody, okay, listen to this record, and they say, oh, it sounds old, it sounds like from the 70s, it sounds, and they don't grok it fully in their heads. So you try to sort of like update it a little bit and say, well, this is just released.
Yeah.
Even though it's 50 years old, this is my version, it's just released, listen to that. And they go, oh, this is great. You know, I like this. And I say, well, that's Bowie.
Yeah.
You know, so it's an honor in that sense. It's like, okay, I mean, I don't aspire to be Bowie. I don't think I'm Bowie, right? But what I would aspire to with the tribute and with the cover albums is introducing new people to Bowie. If
Yeah.
they like my music and my material, and I can get them to listen to 1984 from the Diamond Dogs album, Hunger City, or Lady Grinning Soul, particularly 1984, because then they may go and read the book. And if they read the book, they'll get a wider explanation of what the world consists of and how cycles exist and all that stuff. It's Bowie's genius was the corona of influence. Like
Right.
everything about his music and his lyrical concerns and conceits is deep and intellectual and flows with so many more things than just the music, you know.
Yeah. So speaking of Spotify, you know, we talked before about how you get your music out or how you get music out today, these days, and Spotify was one of them. And your next album uh involves Mike Garson, who we've been
Yes,
talking about.
yes. So
Hane Tatame. Tell
Hane
us about.
Tatame, which that is the name of the album. Hane Tatame is basically a Japanese phrase that refers to the real face of a person and the face they represent to the public.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to draw together the duality of that in the concerns of the album. And I obviously, Carmine is a friend. Carmine played bass on Let's Dance and this Glass Spider tour. So he's played bass on about 6, 7 of my new songs. And I just thought, you know, because there's this one song I have called Lights Out, and it's a very dark song about, you know, the end of the world. So it's the last song on the album. And I had a good version, which had David J. From Bauhaus and Carmine on it. And then I just thought, you know what would be great would be to have Mike Garson. I mean, why not? I'll ask him. So I asked him. I sang in front of the Bowie Celebration, which is a collection of Bowie alumni who go around and they play songs with various singers, right? So I sang one song with them, and I met Mike and his wife, and Joe Sumner was there, and who else? Spooky Ghost. What's his name? Can't remember his name. All I know is Spooky Ghost. And so I met a bunch of the Bowie alum, and I met Mike before as well. I just asked him. He said sure. So he played on a couple of my songs. And Carmine, as I say, is a friend. So we spend some time together, and he came and played. He's come and played on a number of my songs for the album. And his playing, I just said, you know, play it as if it's on One Outside.
Yeah.
That's the album where his playing adds, it's textural, it isn't predominant. And that's what I wanted for the song, because the song's quite written. It was a written, finished song. And then I extended the instrumental sections just so he'd play as much as possible, you know.
When can we expect that to be released?
March 7th.
March 7th.
Coming out on March 7th. I'm releasing the first song, which is not featuring any of those guys. It's just me, but it's an angry song. It's coming out on the birthday of the person towards whom it's directed. Just me being petty.
Yeah.
And it's coming out on December 20th. Then I'm probably going to release a couple more singles each month. Maybe the whole album as you know, bits and pieces. 3 of the songs are already out. They were sort of stopgap singles between Elysium, but they fit on this new one, so they're going to go on there. And it'll be out March 7th. I've got an interview scheduled with American songwriter for that date, so set the date because of that, really. So,
and you know, we asked this before, but okay, so now I want to get it. So how do I get the singles that have already been released? How do I get the album?
Well, they're all on Spotify.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way to do it. I mean, I don't release singles as physical entities now. I just do CDs, and I
Yeah.
do CDs. I mean, I can. 1 second, I'm just going to grab you. I'll show you, because why not? So I have. This is the. I'll send you one, Joe. Actually, it's. This is the physical copy of
Yeah.
Forget That I'm 50, Hunger City, and then I've got the. This was the original cover of Elysium. I've changed it because now this is the cover, and you'll probably be able to guess why.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because unfortunately, do you recognize the Roxy Music
Yeah.
homage?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's Elysium. But yeah, so I do CDs because, obviously when I'm on tour, people buy CDs. I mean, I've sold
Yeah.
more CDs since recently than ever before.
I still like buying CDs.
Well, you don't have to buy this one. I'll send you one.
Well, I appreciate that. Forget That I'm 50. You're going to send me a copy, so now I know how I could get it. But if somebody's watching this, how could they get it?
So so Forget That I'm 50 was released on a different label. So I'm not printing CDs of that.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
Forget That I'm 50 here is a misnomer, because it's actually just Lady Grinning Soul and a couple of other songs that I've done, Bowie songs.
Yeah.
So it's not the album that it's not the Aladdin Sane cover thing. It's different, and I apologize for that, because I can't print CDs of the Aladdin Sane one, because I don't own the masters.
You don't own them.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so Julian, thank you very much. I want to close by asking you a variation of a question I asked you the last time you were on, which I ask everybody, which was, what was your favorite Bowie album and song? But specifically, what's your favorite song off of Aladdin Sane?
Lady Grinning Soul.
Lady Grinning.
It vacillates between the three I mentioned earlier. It's Time, Lady Grinning Soul, and Aladdin Sane. But Lady Grinning Soul is the one I chose, so I have to just go with that, because it's sensual. He never performed it live. There are very rarely sensual love songs in Bowie's catalog.
Yeah, there really are. There are very few. So I lied. I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we'll call it a day. So we talked about the next album, Hane Tatame, but you sort of hinted at another Bowie-related project. Yeah.
So if this is what we're talking about, it may not be. So I'm releasing a cover version every week in November. So 1st, 8th, 16th, 20, whatever. So the first one's As the World Falls Down.
Okay.
The Bowie song from the Labyrinth, because that's the other big song that people request all the time. There are three. Wow. There's Lady Grinning Soul. Everybody loves that one.
Yeah.
As the World Falls Down, and Absolute Beginners. Those are the three lost Bowie songs. So
I'm somewhat shocked. But that's not what I was referring to. I read somewhere something about a Station to Station project.
I'll be doing that on the 50th anniversary for sure, and it'll be just me, I think, because I want to. Because obviously it's so specific, the record. I mean, I could, because there is no guitar tectonics, no piano tectonics. It's very straightforward as a record. I could replay every note, but I'm not going to do that. I have to do something different. So I've got to really figure that out, and it's going to come. I definitely want to do that one. It's my favorite. It is now currently my favorite Bowie album, and it's only 6 songs, so it should be easy, right?
Yeah, no problem, right? And they're such simple songs,
right? Cool. Word on a wing.
So thank you, Julian Shah-Tayler. Thank you very much. This has been wonderful. I'm looking forward to all of your new music that's coming out. I'm looking forward to seeing you live when you're in the East. And I'm so grateful for all the time you've given me. This has been wonderful. I'm glad that we've met. Please let's stay in touch. This is terrific. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you having me on. It's an honor.
Yeah. Thank you.